You thought war meant bombs, tanks, and missiles. Well, not anymore. Today, the battlefield is made up of ports, rare minerals, and shipping routes. The weapons are cobalt, semiconductors, and copper. And the countries fighting this war, they don't wear uniforms, they don't wear boots, they wear suits. So here's the question. If countries don't need soldiers anymore to win wars, then what do they need? You see, this war doesn't make headlines, but it's happening everywhere. In 2025, nations are no longer trading to grow, they're trading to dominate. China controls 90% of rare mineral processing. The US targets Chinese goods that get rerouted through Southeast Asia. And the EU is caught in a big tug of war between tech and electric vehicles. Governments globally are getting bought up for political interests, for supply chain routes, for trade routes, for ports. But why now, and what are the consequences? Traditionally, supply chains have always been about efficiency, but now they're all about power. So ask yourself this: if a country can stop goods from flowing in and out of your country, can they stop your economy from breathing? As the pandemic highlighted, supply chains can be a strong point, but they can be a weak point. That's why now you see countries like the United States wanting to reshore their production. And China very cleverly understands that owning supply chains across the world is one of the most powerful things they can do, hence why they're building ports and building infrastructure all over the globe. You see, at this point, you're not fighting for trade, you're fighting for control. This is a sort of neoimperialism through logistics, where you're no longer fighting with swords and bullets, but you're fighting with contracts, and you're fighting with debt, and you're fighting with logistics. Okay, now let's analyze a few situations. So now, because of the conflict that's happening over in Ukraine, you have a lot of the chips being in very low demand. A lot of the rare minerals that were used to build these chips were coming from Ukraine. And then you can see how global supply chains, the car industry, washing machines, everything is at a lower supply because we can't build them without these chips. The pandemic showed how dependent the whole planet was on China and their manufacturing, their extensive manufacturing network that they have. And today, you see companies like Apple diversifying their manufacturing to be in multiple countries. Now they're expanding into India. Or companies like Tesla that are reevaluating their supply of lithium. They're investing in Chile and Argentina and these countries to be able to diversify their supply of lithium, just so if anything was to happen, they've got multiple sources of lithium and they can still make their batteries. They're not paralyzed. And you see, at that scale, these are not small adjustments. These are billion-dollar adjustments, but it's about resilience and it's about survivability. Because ask yourself, what happens if your business, if your economy is dependent on one region, on one resource, and that region you're dependent on happens to become the battleground of a new war? And it doesn't have to be a war, it can just be a political change, regime change, as you can see in many third world countries, different geopolitical factors, natural factors. You can have tsunamis, you can have tornadoes ruining a whole farm, you can have all sorts of things. This is something companies and industries didn't sign up for, but they are in the crossfire. That's the environment they're in, and hence they have to learn to deal with it. And so they have to adapt and they have to learn to operate and thrive in the current business environment of 2025. You see, raw material shortages, rising costs from tariffs that can occur, onshoring of production, having to dual source to reduce your exposure. You see, all these things nobody signed up for, but you have to adapt. So what's the play? Well, you see, the companies that adapt their supply chains to be resilient, to be strategic, despite the unpredictable business environment of 2025, those are the ones that are going to thrive, those are the ones that are going to survive. And the ones who fail to adapt and the ones who wait are the ones who are going to get crushed. You see, globalization isn't dead. It's more alive than ever. It's fractured. We're entering now an age of multipolar trade. We have multiple different global powers now that have a very big stake in what happens geopolitically. To me, it's been blatantly obvious that Asia is now building for Asia. America still deals with their allies, and Europe is simply scrambling to stay competitive. But now here's the biggest question. What happens when everybody reshores all the manufacturing? Will supply chain inflation just spiral out of control? Will big tech collapse under hardware shortages? Will everything just get very expensive? You see, in all of history, and especially now in 2025, if you want to look at who controls the world, look at who controls the supply chains in the world. Ask yourself, who controls cobalt? Who controls semiconductors? Who controls pharmaceuticals? Who controls the internet? Your data servers? Who controls that? Your biggest ports, who's controlling that? The trade routes. Because the power game isn't being played in war rooms anymore. It's being played in warehouses, in ports, and military bases that protect trade routes around the world. That's where it's being played. And if you want to win, you better start paying attention. This is the war, this is the battlefield, and this is what global domination looks like in 2025.